Welcome to another episode of the Good News Bay podcast, where we are seeking very diligently to make Bay County brighter, one conversation at a time. Today, our conversation is with local business owner and entrepreneur, Allan Branch. And so, Allan, thank you for being with us today. I have been excited and looking forward to having you on the podcast. We're going to dig into some local business stuff, some Panama City stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be neat to hear it from your perspective. We've had some politicians on. We've had some school board members on. Just a number of different backgrounds. Sure. You're a businessman. I'm looking forward to hearing it. So, a couple of things. You're married to Anna.
I am.
And you have two children?
Two children, Jimmy and Sarah.
What ages are they?
14 and 12.
I put you on the spot, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
And so you got a family. That you're born and raised in Panama City.
Born and raised.
And a little bit of background, if you would, about, because I know a lot of what you know and have learned about business comes from your roots. I've heard you talk about entrepreneurship quite a bit. That started somewhere. It started with Dad, didn't it? Mom and Dad.
Started with my grandparents.
Okay.
So my grandparents moved here in '47 from Tallahassee. And my grandfather started, over the next 15 years, started restaurants and car washes here in Pensacola, Tallahassee, Columbus, Georgia. The car washes were called Jimmy's Car Wash. Later, they turned into Speedy Car Wash. I started restaurants called Tally Ho. Started Jimmy's Drive.
Really?
Yeah. My grandfather also started those.
I didn't know that. Honestly, I had no idea. I knew Jimmy's and I knew Tally Ho.
Sure.
I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 75 years of entrepreneurship. I'm really proud of that. My grandfather actually died in '61, so I never got to meet him. My grandmother, over the next 30 years, rented out the restaurants and sold a few. But he was a terrible man as a human being, but a phenomenal entrepreneur. And came from nothing and created he was basically building as a non-general contractor, but building his own businesses from the ground up himself. Every year he started a new business. So he had like 15 restaurants, 12 restaurants over the Southeast. And at the time that drive-ins were kind of coming around, and car washes. And he was opening car washes back when banks didn't give a loan for car washes. They said, "What's a car wash?" In fact, what later turned into my dad's car wash in downtown was the second oldest car wash in America until Hurricane Michael came.
This is going to be a fun conversation, and it really is going to be hard to keep it short. But let me tell you something about my audience.
Yeah.
We want to be a podcast where younger business-oriented people, men that are not technically on many of the social media outlets, can get a hold of us.
Right.
But I know that the largest part of our audience today is going to be people watching us on that video camera.
Sure.
Some of them are going to be senior adults watching us on a smart TV on YouTube.
Sure.
And some of them are going to be watching us on Facebook.
Right.
You had them. They haven't known. They've heard Allan Branch. They haven't known exactly who that is. They may or may not be familiar with your dad.
Right.
At Jimmy's Drive-In in Tally Ho, you just made new friends.
Yeah, those are beloved businesses that turned into high school hangouts for generations.
Yep.
One of my favorite stories, when we were moving back, I was actually at a barber shop with my son, who's Jimmy Branch. I'm actually James Branch, too, but I go by Allan. And the barber went to high school at Bay High, and the man in the chair, I knew the barber, and the barber went to Bay. He said, talking to the guy in the chair and said, "Hey, that's Jimmy Branch the fourth down there," talking to my 6-year-old son. And the guy said, he kind of paused and got a little choked up, and he said, "My wife and I went on our first date to Jimmy's. And we had the rainbow drink, which was a drink that was like lemonade and cherry juice. And she said, 'Oh, there's alcohol in this drink.' And he said, 'There's no alcohol.' But she had just passed away." He started crying. And so you don't really, these little things, like, you don't realize how important little restaurants are and things to our community, because it's the stories of the community. So I'm really, as you can tell, I'm really proud of my.
And rightly so. I didn't mean to interrupt. That's a nugget, man. That's cool.
Yeah. So let's see. I grew up with entrepreneurial parents. My parents took over the car washes in like '85 after being school teachers, and my uncle took the restaurants, Jimmy and Tally Ho, and ran those. And so I grew up at the car washes. I grew up at the restaurants. Grew up. My family doesn't at the dinner table. We don't talk about politics. We talk about business.
So we part of my training is in how children learn. Like my doctorate was relative to how they learn faith and how to help parents with that.
Sure.
What I learned is that in that whole research piece is that children, the most powerful teaching tool is what we model for them.
Sure.
It's not structured teaching. It's not even teachable moments. What you are literally saying that I've picked up on already is you had entrepreneurship modeled for you.
Oh, yeah.
And literally probably learned and asked questions and heard stories, because you strike me as a guy that likes to hear stories.
I love stories, yeah.
And so this has been modeled for you now for generations.
Right.
That's just cool.
Yeah, I grew up, and we kind of touched on it, which was these businesses, these car washes and restaurants that the community does adore. The privilege I had, what people don't realize about the way I grew up is when you have a family who has beloved businesses, my whole life I would be going and meeting. Say I went to Bay High and I'd bump into a new teacher. Hey, what's your name? Allan Branch. Oh, like the car washes? Yeah. Well, I worked there. Tally Ho? Oh, so everyone has some sort of, it's such a small town, they have a tie into these businesses. And so what does that do for someone growing up? I was constantly filled up with kind words and respect, and people believed me when I would talk to them. And so that didn't necessarily give me everything I had, but it gave me confidence, and it gave me this sort of childhood where the people were kind to me. Now I had people that were terrible to me. I had coaches that were hard on me. I had a spotlight on me because my parents, my mom would say, you're going to get in trouble and you'll be on the news. But my whole life, I just bumped into people who would say nice things to me. So out of nothing that I had done, right? It's all this legacy that I had cashed in on and gotten respect for that I didn't do anything for.
Well, you're certainly carrying it on.
Yeah.
You were a Bay High grad.
Bay High graduate.
Played a little football.
I did play football. Bay High and University of Alabama in Birmingham. And left that. I realized that I didn't like football, even though I was good at it. And then kind of got a hold of computers and design and software, which is really how I make money and make a living.
When did you move back to Panama City?
2009, 2008, something like that. We spent 10 years, my wife and I spent 10 years in Birmingham, Alabama, where she's from, and I love Birmingham. But it took me a long time to realize how I grew up was special and how small towns are special. I remember this moment. We were in Birmingham and my transmission had gone out on my expedition. And I asked my wife, I said, who's your family transmission guy?
Who do you trade with?
And she said, she's right, exactly. My dad would trade car washes with people. Yeah. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, who's like the tire guy that your family goes to? She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Just got to get there. And I was like, sure. We have like a tire person. We've got like being a small town. My dad would say, go talk to that person. Tell him I'll pay him later. Start a tab. And so I didn't realize how special that was until I didn't have it. I want my kids to grow up that way.
Alan, we moved back. My family did in 2007, and it really is. It's a thing. It's great, I think, for folks that have grown up here and never left.
Sure.
But when you grow up and you move away and then you come back, for me, it created a love for the community that I didn't really know where I lived and what it was about until I got back.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So you got a background in software. You moved back in 2009. Mm-hmm. One of the things as we began, let me back there. Fill me the gap. 2009 to
yeah, 2009. Did
you just try a lot of different things? Were there a lot of projects in the middle of all that?
Certainly. There's always more failures than successes in any story. Started lots of different little software projects, which means I spent nights and weekends building ideas. And some of them flopped and some of them did really, really well. But I've always had a passion for working hard and exploring an idea.
Where did, and maybe you've told me some that I didn't already know about the two businesses with Tally Ho and the drive-in, Jimmy's, but why downtown?
Why downtown? So when you look at communities, the historic districts are the origin story of where they got started. And when you start buying buildings, or when you start understanding that, you start realizing like downtown was the whole city. Like that's where it started. So you have all this story about like this building was this, and then it was this, and then it's interesting to think about how maybe in 20 years someone will be like, and then this guy named Allan bought it, and then he went completely broke, and then someone else bought the building. But you become part of this story, and nostalgia is this really powerful emotion that people have, and every vibrant community has a really great historic district. it's like it's like the soul of the company. Most towns look the same. Most of them are like strip mall, nail store, nail salon, tire store, Chick-fil-A, dry cleaner. That's every town in America, right? But your downtowns are like your unique places. Your downtown is actually a reflection. The buildings, the materials, the businesses are all a reflection of when the town boomed. So if you really want to see when the town boomed, you look at their downtown. So to me, that's really interesting. Coming from software, so you look at my family story, which is like brick and mortar businesses. My grandfather dies. My grandmother saves all this stuff, business cards, briefcase. I have all this stuff from my grandfather. I spend two decades building software businesses, doing really well, but there's nothing there. Like there's no thing that I can go, when I'm gone, you're going to have this thing. You're going to go, hey, look, my grandfather gave me this. You're not going to pass down a software file, right? So you're building things and doing well and making money, but there's no legacy. It's really, I don't think that goes with human nature. We want to make things and we want to be remembered. And so real estate for me was a stable investment and something my kids could hopefully look back on and be like, my dad built that, my dad owned that, that kind of story. I had that desire.
So part of what I think is fascinating is in 2017, you guys you bought a piece of property,
Sure.
An old warehouse.
Yeah.
I saw there's actually a video we can link to that you bought low, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Something I heard you say,
Sure.
You buy low when you buy something nobody else wants.
Nobody wants it. Mm-hmm.
And you made this incredible home out of that piece of property.
Sure.
And that story, which is, again, the link, but it was a Lowe's home improvement series.
Yeah, so one of the businesses we started years ago, which is run by Eric Darnell, a local guy who went to Rutherford, is a video production company. And so we were making videos for our software products. And I kept having friends with software companies going, I want a video for my software product. And so it just grew into some business. And then we kind of trimmed that down a little bit. And when we bought that building, I just thought, man, this is kind of cool, isn't it? And then I was like, how do you make a show? I literally was Googling, like, how do you make a TV show? And then I was like, well, let's make a pilot. Like, what is a pilot? Like, it's like a 3 or 4 minute long video. So we're just making it up as we go. And I made like this little landing page on our website. And I just started sending it to companies. I hired an assistant to find emails, addresses, and we got a hold of someone at Lowe's. And they liked it. Had a few other companies bidding on it and trying to buy it too. And, I'm on the phone with Quikrete, or, like the world's largest concrete company, talking to the CMO. And he's like, what are you looking for? And I'm like, he's like, oh, it sounds like you're looking for a market buy or something. I'm like, that's what I want. I'm like Googling what he's saying as earned media. He's like, you want an earned media deal? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what I want, an earned media deal. And so, and then I had contacted a few other people who had sold shows. I like to ask questions, so I find people who are years ahead of me and just say, I don't know what I'm doing. Will you help me and tell me how you did this thing? And people typically want to help other people. And so people have given me hints on how to word things and contracts and that kind of stuff. But the whole purpose of that show, people think I had made lots of money on that show. I canceled a $2 million software project with a client to do a little tiny home renovation video project. It did not make sense money-wise.
Right.
This was merely trying something new. What is this? And I want my kids I have incredible home videos now.
You've documented the process.
So it was an experience for my kids that you can't replicate. And that's really what the goal.
You did that and you started that in 2017. Mm-hmm. We had this little thing called Hurricane Michael in 2018.
Yeah.
That was right in the middle of that process, right?
Well, it was right after it. So the home renovation project should have taken 2 years, but we did it in 8 months because we worked 7 days a week. And we actually had deals lined up with Duluth Trading Company. Columbia was one of our wardrobe sponsors. It was a massive project that I will never want to do again. But and then we got finished, and then Hurricane Michael came. So it's been like just
Did you have a bunch of damage and stuff to fix after that?
We did. We actually all the roofs downtown old roofs have pebbles, tar and pebbles.
Yeah.
And so as those roofs are coming off, we're just getting like shrapnelled. So all our windows had chip marks in it, and the solar panels we had on our roof just took the roof off with it. And but it wasn't as bad as a lot of people,
right.
Mainly because there's no trees around us. So it was an interesting few hours, wasn't it?
It was.
I think everyone who stayed had a moment where they were like, this was a bad idea to stay.
You're right. You're right. It was a very emotional moment where
Right.
you recognize
I remember Anna, my wife was like, I'm going to go to the bathroom with the kids. I was like, that drywall is not going to save you. That was an interesting few hours.
So adversity, even since then, I mean, it's just so many of us have had to find a way,
Sure,
and create a way, and there's so much in my view that is, it goes alongside of business ownership.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to point out just a real live example, I've watched local businesses lately. Like if you, it was a long time before we had a place where you could get a hamburger.
Sure.
Right? Whataburger was one of the. I love Whataburger. People that know me know that. And so I've watched them in this process.
Mm-hmm.
They were one of the first, and I don't know anybody over there other than the people, all the staff that know me.
Sure, sponsored by Whataburger.
Yeah. Well, but like they had to figure out how to get burgers going, and they were one of the first that did. But then they've had to figure out, after they figured that out, then they had to figure out the pandemic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make it work when you don't have staff? And then there's a water boil notice, and they got to figure out how you do business without all that. Because you got to do it. Mm-hmm. And some people are happy, some people aren't. DoorDash was in the middle of all this.
Sure.
Apps are coming online. This is what businesses do. They troubleshoot. They figure out how do you make 2 drive-through lines. Mm-hmm. You've had to figure out all that stuff in business through the hurricane, right?
Yeah.
Or before and then since. But when we talk about rebuilding downtown, all of this is part of that story. Mm-hmm. And what makes you a shining example to some extent is you've kept a positive attitude, it seems, and maybe not every day, but there's some pieces to this where you've made different parties work together. Maybe some days they like it, some days they don't. Sure. But you figure out how to bring some things together to make it work. That's what entrepreneurship is.
Right.
Now you've done that. You've done that in part with some other partners, with some other projects downtown.
Right.
Is it fair to say that the hurricane, despite all the pain it brought, none of us would have chosen it? It's created some unique opportunities to rebuild, recreate, restore some things downtown. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of the good things that have come because of what we've seen with the hurricane, like the Sapp House, for instance?
Yeah, well, so entrepreneurship is like life in general. Right? We're just making it up as we go, right? We have a guiding North Star of how we make some of our decisions, but most of the time you're just making it up as you go. Wait
a minute, can we do that?
Yeah, I'm just making this up.
Aren't you supposed to have like a 15-year plan?
I mean, certainly you have like a general direction you want to work towards, but day to day, and you learn how to make decisions better. You go, I messed that up. I'm never doing that again. And that's really how I learn. But.
So I'm poking at you a little bit because I think the leadership pieces matter. Mm-hmm. I told our church family at the beginning of the year, because we've restarted church like 3 times now, and every time you redo that, things have to be different based on the kind of the landscape that literally changed.
Sure.
And so I gave them this term, flex agility. It wasn't original with me. I found it online. Doing it. But it's more than just being flexible. It's being flexible like in real time.
Right.
And so what you're talking about is making it up as you go. You have to in business sometimes.
Absolutely. Business is problem solving, and problem solving you don't typically know the answer to. And you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable mentally.
You ask a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. And then a lot of times, if you have a really smart staff or people around you, you are presenting ways to solve the problem and going, what do you guys think? And they'll often either decide for you or with you, or they'll go along with your idea because they've been heard.
You strike me as a really bright guy, and brightness matters, right? It's important. And I don't know that on the first day of school is the day to say this, because we're recording this like the opening day of school in Bay County. But problem solving is critical to entrepreneurship.
I agree.
And people that have to figure things out generally are not always the ones that just memorized it first time.
No. And
so they have to ask lots of questions. They spend their whole life, like early on, having to figure things out in every class they're ever in.
Oh, yeah.
These are nuts and bolts guys a lot of times.
Sure.
I'm wanting to make a connection with people that are trying to figure out, what can I do? Can I be an entrepreneur?
Sure.
You just have to be a problem solver.
And relentless.
Relentless.
And being relentless. And entrepreneurs have like this weird ability to turn like everything into a good problem. It's like, hey, this is a great problem. The hurricane, we're going to find a silver lining with the hurricane, right? So like you take crazy situations that most people would go, I give up. And you go like, it's going to be great, everybody, because...
Well, and we talk about making lemonade. Like,
Right.
bring me the lemons, we're going to make some lemonade.
Right.
I mean,
making lemonade out of a Cat 5 hurricane.
You have to. Like, you didn't get the choice.
I agree. No, it's been a good thing. The hurricane, I mean, let's talk, that was one of your original questions.
Yep.
The hurricane sped up decisions. So any downtown, any area that's blighted is stagnant. And it's stagnant because lots of reasons, but people are typically holding on to property for some reason. But the hurricane, if you were thinking about retiring, you went ahead and retired afterwards.
Yes, you did.
Because you got paid out by your insurance company, and you're like, I'm not rebuilding that building. Here you go, I'll sell it to you cheap. Or I think I'm going to sell a business, or start a business, or sell it. All those 10 years of decisions got pushed into 6 months. So you had, and so what you touched on Chris Kramer and Kevin Wattenberger. So my wife and I have a few projects downtown. I have projects with a few partners, and then my parents are also buying properties downtown. But Chris Kramer and Kevin Wattenberger and I have known these guys since high school. My mom went to high school with Chris Kramer's mom, and this is a small town. But really, in those early days, sort of recovering from the hurricane, a few weeks, we had looked at downtown, and we had. Kevin is my real estate agent. Kevin had just for years pouring information about real estate into me. I'd ask him lots of questions. I still ask him lots of questions. Yeah. And for me, I think I felt like a lot of people, which was like, when I say if we don't rebuild the town, I mean, cumulatively we. Yes. I don't think Chris Kramer and Kevin Wattenberg and I are rebuilding the whole town. But it felt like, if not now, then when? If not us, then who? And so, and what happened during those months after the hurricane year is we, as a community, we were starving for hope, and we were starving for something good. I mean,
we were.
When Whataburger would open, we're like, "Yay, Whataburger!" Right? Like, you're rooting for every business coming back. I mean, it was just. But you had people selling buildings and starting businesses, and it gave everyone a kick in the pants. And now we're seeing all this insurance money and all this federal money now coming in, state money coming in. And it just felt like you have three guys, Chris Kramer, Kevin and I, and I can't. There's lots of people helping downtown. We are not the only three. We are inspired by others, and we're hoping to inspire other people.
In any way, with like missing somebody, because there's a bunch of guys down there doing great things.
Lots of people, yeah. So when I talk about us, I'm not saying we're the greatest, because we're not. But you have three guys who have some passive capital, who know people in town, who just want to make their parents proud.
Yep.
Right. That's really, and we want to, and so we all have our other jobs that we work, and these side projects that we're doing together. And it's more fun when these projects are more fun with friends. That's really what it boils down to.
Well, I'm going to mention a couple of things that I think we can put some links on. Some of those may be directly connected to you, and some of them not. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to run out of time, actually, and I want to talk about some other things. But I want to mention the Sapp House.
Sure.
Because there are folks that would be looking potentially for a venue to go do a thing.
Yeah.
And it's a space in the downtown area.
Sure.
It's been renovated. It's got a lot of history. There's videos on the history. We'll put the link somewhere. But some of the guys you mentioned went in together to make that happen.
We did. We bought an old home near the courthouse, one of the original homes downtown, and the county had plans to tear it down because they wanted parking for the courthouse. But it's a protected home from the National Registry, and we know people, and so we explained our intention to the county commissioners. They trusted us because we had done other projects, and they allowed us to purchase it instead of them buying it with first right of refusal.
Right.
And now it's a wedding venue. We have like 4 weddings booked in October, and so it's cool seeing this old building that could be gone being used for public gatherings. That's the goal, bringing the community together.
Also, history class brewing. I need to mention that because that's you've been heavily involved along with your partners. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the history and history class. There's you like hearing about stories. I love how you've taken this entrepreneurial spirit.
Sure.
And you've connected it because a lot of those folks that were at Jimmy's and Tally-Ho back in the day that met their person they've been married to for 57, 60 or more years, they don't want to see all these icons go.
Right.
You've somehow mixed the two. So the history and history class.
So if you look at vibrant communities, they do a lot of things. But one thing they do is they really protect and preserve stories. And like to love a place and live there, you have to know about it. Right. And so typically my grandfather loved to name businesses after himself. Jimmy's Drive-In, Jimmy's Car Wash. He was very ostentatious of a guy in the 40s and 50s. But vibrant communities, they preserve stories, they preserve old buildings, they preserve these old things. And so as a marketer, I consider myself a person who does marketing, and we have video production, which is Eric Darnell, who's this phenomenal storyteller. I wanted to give him the ability to tell stories. And as someone who, we make beer in history class, I don't make the beer. As a marketer, it would be really boring to just talk about beer for the next 25 years. It's way more fun to talk about the community and people in it and the stories. And all these street names and school names came from people who poured themselves into the town. These aren't just you don't get a stadium named after you or a street for being selfish and a jerk. You get it for doing something extraordinary for the community for decades.
Right.
And you get forgotten. Like the Hathaway Bridge. There's all these names of people that we don't know. And it's very common in cities. And so history class gives us the ability to tell stories and help the Bay County Historic Society. And really, History Class Brewing Company is a mechanism we gave away $25,000 in the past year and a half to nonprofits. We put a ton of money into video production, preserving stories and documenting stories. And it's across the street from my house too.
So I've never gotten to personally go see the history.
Sure.
And it wouldn't be a shock. I'm not a beer guy.
Sure.
But I read online y'all have homemade sodas.
We do.
And that's kids like those.
They do. Kids like
I might want mine in a bigger glass.
Sure.
Not
sure.
The plastic cup.
Sure.
But the history is there. Some of these stories, some of these pictures, you've collected some stuff.
Right. Talking about the menu, I didn't want to build a place. We didn't. Tim Whaler's my partner in the brewery. He's our brewer. We don't want to build a place where people don't feel welcome. So if you don't drink beer, it doesn't matter. We have sodas and water. We've got food. Some people don't even drink beer. We've got wine if you drink wine. Special, great, vibrant towns have third places, and we talked about that. So breweries are often third places. Like your home is your first place, your work is your second, your third place is your gym or your church, or your yacht club, your park. It's where you go to gather. So breweries have that ability. So the purpose of building the brewery was a gathering place downtown where people could bump into each other. And so if we want to be exclusive, you can't just be like, we only do beer. So if you don't drink beer, that's totally cool. Come in and have a soda. You don't have to buy anything. Just come in and walk around. It makes me so happy to see people just taking pictures of things on the walls and stuff. We've got jerseys from high schools and pictures, and the tables were built out of Bay High gym floor, and there's an old boat stern in the front from a local boat, and there's tons of stuff just all over the place.
I want to come see.
I need to do a video of each. There's hundreds of items that people. What the Storm did too was when I announced we're doing history class, it'll be like a historic museum with food and beer. People had their attics wiped out, and they're like, I got all this stuff they're cleaning my attic out, cleaning my mom's attic. Here's stuff. So people just were bringing me stuff, helmets and jerseys and just all kinds of stuff. And it's really cool to take something that someone gave me and put on the wall, because then they walk in, they take their family, and they're like, look at this.
Is it cool to me. So we've got people that are new to Bay County.
Yeah.
Like they're moving in here in Orange.
Sure.
I'm
welcome.
Hopeful. Yeah. They're watching and listening.
Yeah.
They don't know about downtown.
Yeah.
When we in our first podcast we had General McQueen come on, and he talked about this idea of making Panama City the premier city in the Panhandle,
sure.
right? People that have never been downtown don't know what's down there.
Right.
Your place is open.
Very odd hours, but yeah.
Well, no, not super. I mean, they're open on the weekends.
We are. We're only closed Mondays and Tuesdays.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But if I brought my family down there and wanted to see some of this history, of course we'd come in, we'd find a seat, we'd be able to order off the menu, which I want to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
Is it normal to walk around and look at the walls?
Absolutely.
And
people take pictures, and kids are welcome. We have a coloring book right now. The coloring book is the Junior Food Store logo, which is a Panama City thing. People by the time are like, what are you talking about? And previously it was like a historic coloring book that we alternate through. But people bring puppy dogs, and it's a very welcoming area.
Is the pork sandwich, pork Sammy, is that always on the menu?
That's always on the menu. We have smokers in the back where we smoke our own meats every day. And
you pride yourself on being kind of a high class food, not just
Yeah, there's certainly an easy way with food distributors to get all this stuff brought in really easy. And I like to think we have very few items on the menu. It's only like 6 items, but they're done very well. And so it's fewer but really good items.
Chicken tenders on there?
Chicken tenders, we hand bread the chicken tenders, hand cut them. Most people are getting those from Cisco or Cheney Brothers, and they just throw them in a fryer. But we bread ours and we marinate ours, and it's quite a production.
Chicken tenders,
we do
French fries,
deviled eggs on Wednesdays.
I saw pictures of those. Those look fascinating.
They are. They're
I mean, I know what the old potluck deviled eggs look like, but they're all the same. This almost looked like the different ways that you can get, like oysters come with all kind of different toppings on them.
Sure.
These deviled eggs looked impressive, but those are only what day?
Only on Wednesdays.
All right.
Yeah.
Are y'all open all day on Wednesdays?
No, we're only open, most days we open at 4. We close at 10, except for Saturday and Sunday.
And all that information, if they go to the Facebook page, which we'll put in the comments.
Yeah. But if you are new to Bay County, let me tell you, Bay County, if you don't know, has an amazing history of through World War II, creating Liberty ships, through the Civil War with salt production. There were Nazi U-boats outside of our bay. There's a gun turret. You know, they were building Liberty ships in our bay at the port, and there's a gun turret at the pass to keep Nazi U-boats out of our bay. We have an incredible history with the Native Americans. We have the first, there was no black beaches during segregation in all of, we're the first black beach in all of the whole state. So we've been progressive. It's really, we have some amazing stories in this town.
Do you have any pictures or memorabilia of those days at the port?
Oh yeah, we have an oar from a Liberty ship.
The reason I ask you that's I've never been able to get information about it, but when my daddy was a little boy, that means my grandfather, he helped build ships at the port.
Oh, yeah.
And in the Drummond Park area, I think before the college was built, it's where they lived across from the port.
Oh, yeah, that was all ship. I grew up on Palmetto Avenue, which is like 3 streets over from the port.
Are there pictures of any of that?
Oh, yeah, we have a ton of stuff on Liberty ships. Liberty ships were credited with helping us win World War II.
All right.
Yeah, we have a fascinating history in this town.
I'm coming. So a couple of other things beyond, because you do that mostly for fun. I mean, it's really neat what you've done. It's created a new environment. Mm-hmm. We've talked about these 171 new businesses since the hurricane in the Panama City area. You're pro Panama City, pro Bay County.
Bay County, yeah.
And in light of that, if they're new to the area, if you weren't going to go down there to history class, where would you go? What would you go down there and do? I mean, like escape man or down there?
Yeah, you have an escape room. You've got a glass blowing studio where you can watch them blow live glass right there. Of course, you got a history class. You've got a ton of women's boutiques down there. You've got antique malls. You've got the Bay County Historic Museum. You've got
the Martin Theater.
Martin
Is it
Theater,
back open
it's
again?
not back open yet. They're redoing it. You've got an Irish pub called House of Henry. You've got an incredible Mexican restaurant called Maddie's La Casita.
Maddie's.
It's changing. Yeah, it used to be Friday nights 4 years ago. Downtown was a ghost town, and now you can't hardly find a parking spot. So
there's a songwriter festival coming up, right?
It is, yeah.
In like November-ish. Mm-hmm. Also, the St. Andrews side of things.
Yeah,
that's developed quite a bit. Yeah. There are a number of restaurants down there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are there any places down there that is it okay for me to put you on the spot?
Oh yeah, I grew up in St. Andrews. I love St. Andrews. Yeah.
There's I think I'm missing. There's a couple of pizzerias out.
You do. You have you have Copper Tap. You've got Los Angelitos. You've got Sunjammers. Yeah. You've got Slice House.
They do a market down there.
They
too,
do
like a vegetable market.
We both have downtown and St. Andrews both have farmers markets, and on Saturday mornings, and they're both huge. In fact, we actually will travel. My wife and I will go to Greenville, South Carolina, because our farmers market is so big. So farmers markets are like an economic driver.
So part of what I want our folks to hear is that they need to take an evening or a day, and they need to go to St. Andrews and walk around and do dinner, and they need to do something very similar to that over in the downtown area. Yeah,
and follow the St. Andrews Keep St. Andrews Salty Facebook page, and then downtown has a couple different historic pages too. If you search downtown Panama City, you'll find pages.
Another way that I think your view is fascinating is that you have been in a lot of the meetings and been involved really with Downtown Improvement Board and some other things there, involved with city leaders, General McQueen. Mm-hmm. He did talk a lot about progress. It's taken a long time to get plans together, to get funding, all those kind of things. From your perspective, is it happening?
It is, absolutely. When we first moved downtown, when I attribute make references to when we moved downtown. I'm not claiming that it's my success. Let me just start there. But I would say 4 years ago when we first started buying properties, the general attitude of downtown was you couldn't find a tenant. And it was the cheapest rent in all Bay County. And the only reason why businesses were downtown at that moment, it felt like, and what people said is because their rent is cheap. And now you have people who are fighting to be downtown because they feel like downtown and St. Andrews will bring them closer to success.
Yep.
And that's been really interesting to see. So I was buying buildings for $10 a square foot. I mean,
I'm not sure I can completely communicate what I feel and what I'm about to say, but it looks like to me. I mentioned to you before we went on air that I'm a Lynn Haven guy.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the Forest Park area, R.L. Turner Ball,
Sure.
all that. So I didn't go downtown a lot. And some of what you've explained, like if we talk about the Grace District, and there's some really unique cultural things down there that are happening. I'm having to learn all that, and I'm enjoying that cultural piece. But I don't know that there's always been the kind of desire, and I think there is now in a way that there hasn't been before. Maybe it's because of the hurricane. Maybe it's because of a new generation coming up. We all want all of Bay County to succeed.
Right.
You and I have never really gotten to sit and have a conversation, but I'm already making a connection because, one, the entrepreneurial spirit. I like this little term, spiritual entrepreneurship, because we've had to figure out how to make it work. But it gives me joy to see you guys successful in the downtown area or St. Andrews area. The guys on the beach are ecstatic about what's happening over here and vice versa, because we all I think you've said that when the tide rises, all boats float.
That's correct.
I've heard it a lot, really.
Well, and if you really look at a small town and you were like, everyone's looking at each other going, oh, they're jealous of each other and hating on. Is that really, do you think that's the foundation of a nice community? No, it's not. And so bickering and resentment and envy are not really foundationally good emotions to create a community around. And so it's, to me, it's just an odd way to be. So I think I think it is, after the hurricane, you realize that your small businesses are the ones that are going to help you. And you're finding locals are now even more relentlessly supporting local businesses, which is really special. As much as we all love Whataburger, a town of Whataburgers isn't very. There's not much soul in a Whataburger filled town, and so I think you're seeing a little bit of all of that kind of coming together. And we grew up in the mall, right? We were probably, I didn't live in the mall, but I'd go to Pocket Change. But kids of the 80s and early 90s, we were mall kids. That was the cool place to be, right?
Yeah.
But when you really look at malls, there's no nostalgia there. They're dying out. So malls were notorious for ripping the downtown apart, and now the downtown's killing them all. And they are replicating, developers replicate downtowns with developments. Look at Pier Park. Pier Park is a mall, but it's designed after a downtown.
Well, and I think I saw, and I don't know that you're in the middle of it necessarily, but there's some more housing coming downtown.
Oh, yeah.
The apartment I'm saying that, the St. Joe project down there is going to be a big deal. There's just a bunch of stuff, but it is happening. I kind of wanted people that don't trust government to hear you say, I can see it coming.
There are new staff at City Hall that are collaborative and fresh eyes and fresh ears, and I am a mere drop in the people who are pushing downtown. I want to make sure that's really clear, that I'm, if 5% of the projects that I've been talking about happen, it's going to be, downtown is going to be phenomenal. So it's a real exciting time. The hurricane will be looked at like a good thing in 10 years. Kind
of what you mentioned earlier is that so much has happened so quickly because of that crisis. Mm-hmm. And we've learned, whether it is a hurricane or a pandemic, crisis accelerates change.
Sure.
It's hard to swallow it when it's changing that fast. Mm-hmm. Some of us don't like it. In fact, a lot of us don't like it to some extent because it creates discomfort.
Right.
But that has caused us to pedal fast, to be flex agile, right? To be entrepreneurs.
Right.
And things are getting better, and they're getting better quickly. Mm-hmm.
If you were looking for the easy road in life, Bay County was not the place to be.
It was the time to move and retire.
But what is that? It attracts people who want to hustle and work hard and figure things out and collaborate. The people who are tired, non-collaborative, nasty, they're looking for an easy road, they're gone or they retired.
Yep.
And now it's people here who are ready to put the work in.
Yep, for sure. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think is noteworthy, we'll link it on, again, in the comments, but you were chosen by the governor's office to be at a press conference.
Sure.
They had, I think in the conference he says he never comes with empty hands.
Sure.
And it's true. About once a month at least, they come to town providing money. I think like I do, some people could make it super political one way or the other. The fact is, in a pro-Bay County mode, we had, at a time that I think you would agree that often Northwest Florida gets overlooked.
Sure.
With state funding.
Right.
There has been a commitment from the governor and the governor's wife relative to a whole host of issues. But some of those have impacted what you're doing. I don't even know that I've got the exact right title, but I think it was what is the dollar figure that they were bringing to Bay County? Is it
well, it was as a whole, it was like 56 million, but then Bay County, I think, was like 21 or something. Then downtown's getting 12 of that or something like that.
And it's a program that puts dollars into the Main Street areas.
Right.
Obviously, you've invested as a family all the way back, generations, but since 2009, you've been back. And so you got to come on and actually talk about the implications of those dollars.
Sure.
Can you talk about that just for a second? If they don't go and look at the video, I mean, it was a privilege, I know, but
absolute honor, and
we saw you in a sports coat.
And
People don't get to see that very often.
I normally wear clothes with holes in it because I'm always working on something or doing something. But I put a sports coat on, and I was asked to speak, but quite a privilege. Drugged my kids there, and made them watch that, but. The money was appropriated for historic districts, so I was asked to speak about the significance of historic districts within a community, and I'm not getting any of the money, and so I couldn't talk about there's city projects happening. There are some personal projects that are getting funded for people, but it was an exciting day, really exciting to speak in front of the governor and that kind of stuff.
But it's certainly for Bay County, right?
Certainly not something I enjoy doing because,
you don't like being in the spotlight.
No, I don't like public speaking and sports coats, so it was like double bad. But after looking back, it was like that is kind of cool.
But you would advocate those dollars coming to our community are a big deal.
Huge. DeSantis, even his wife had been spearheading mental health of the children,
right? Giving
them counselors in school because they realized how bad it was after the storm for everybody, and especially for the kids. And that's huge. Having a first lady or first governor lady, spearheading that. But he has been a relentlessly helping us. And I don't remember a governor coming into town this much growing up.
I don't either.
Maybe I wasn't aware, but
knowing how many people have experienced how difficult it's been, it's just nice to hear finally, because for so long we were hearing from Congress and others like we've been forgotten. We've been forgotten. We are not being forgotten at this point.
Not the state level.
No, we're not. And another thing, and I know you like to press past those that would have reasons why you can't, right? Entrepreneurs don't take no for an answer.
Sure.
And those that have been through so much sometimes are like, man, we're never going to get our way out of this. Right. Taxes are going to be too high.
Sure.
I heard even General McQueen was talking about how old the plumbing is down in the downtown area.
Oh, yeah.
And because I keep getting asked when I say, wait, what would you like for me to ask these people? They're like, ask about infrastructure. Well, I know the dollars are coming.
Right.
You're seeing, you can give witness to the fact that some of this stuff is getting corrected.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the storm, but because of dollars that are coming in, government dollars, and because of new people moving here, right?
The reality is the storm saved us. That's the reality.
That's good
for
news.
40 years, we didn't invest in our infrastructure. We did, as at least Panama City saved a lot of money. They had a higher reserve than most cities have and are required to have. Florida requires you to have a certain reserve amount in your municipal accounts. But our infrastructure was falling apart because it's never fun as a politician to say, hey, I'm going to raise taxes to pay for certain sewer lines.
We don't like hearing that around.
Right, we don't.
No.
And so the hurricane did mess up a lot of our sewer lines, but a lot of them were 80 years old. They should have been replaced long ago. And so what that did was it gave us the ability to borrow money, interest really low, free money to repair infrastructure that we would have never been able to afford. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in just Panama City,
right?
33,000 people. We would have never been able to afford that. And so the storm gave us opportunities that it saved us.
Well, and I think you did. You said that what you're working on is a drop in the bucket compared to what's been talked about, what is actually happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so for anybody that has been kind of naysayers, like, oh, the general's out there talking about what we're going to do, that'll never happen. They've been talking about it for years. These are different times.
They are.
It is happening.
It is, and I think most people. I always encourage people to watch county and city meetings, wherever you live. They're all on Facebook or YouTube now.
They are.
And these local politicians are your neighbors, and you can email them and call them. Their numbers are available, and they will talk to you. And once it's easy to be skeptical from the outside when you're ignorant, but once you start attending the meetings and asking people questions, you start going, oh, I know that person down there. They're really nice, and they're not a crook. And
right.
Like you talk to McQueen, and you believe him because he's a good and honest man. And if he says things are good, things are coming, I'm like, yeah, I believe it because I believe the guy.
I loved your post. We're going to put a link on that too. I loved your post. That has, you say you're going to post every year, but it's a picture of him in work boots.
Oh yeah.
Shortly after the storm.
Oh yeah.
And he didn't take that role just to be a figurehead.
He did not. He is a special human being, and I realized who he reminded me of. In college, I had a quarterback coach named Pat Sullivan, who was the Heisman Trophy winner at Auburn. And there's a certain kind of leader who leads with fear, and then certain ones that lead with like love and respect, and they don't command respect. Like General McQueen never says, "I'm a 2-star general." He never says that, right? But when he speaks, you want to listen. And Pat Sullivan had the same thing. You would have coaches yelling and cursing at you that you didn't want to screw up just because like you didn't want to hear them yell. But Pat Sullivan and McQueen lead with a different style that you want to make them happy and you believe they're special people. And the first thing I said to McQueen was, I said, I want to learn how to speak like you do, because the way I'm a bumbling idiot, and he's like this elegant, precise, and when he speaks, you want to listen. And there's a reason you don't just accidentally become a 2-star general. I'm pretty sure of that.
No, you don't. I'm changing gears a little bit, trying to make it. I want to talk about tacos. Can I just do that?
Sure, yeah.
You started it. It's weird.
Yeah.
El Weirdo taco truck.
Yeah, so we bought a taco truck in
Mr. Entrepreneur.
It's just dumb enough to work, is what I always say. The taco truck is really a proof of concept. We're gonna start construction of the actual full brewery. It's gonna be 2 blocks from the history class called El Weirdo, and it'll be tacos and beer and other things. But El Weirdo is a name that, history class is about celebrating our stories. El Weirdo is, I think most of us grew up feeling kind of weird. And Bay County, small towns don't do a good job of like lifting up the youth that are different and odd. They kind of celebrate the ordinary, I think. And your artistic kids and your theater majors and all the above, they need to be celebrated more. Football players, got celebrated way too much.
Right.
And what happens is that you have a town who celebrates football, and all your community theater people leave. And I want to have a mechanism, a business that's a flywheel to celebrate those people, tell those stories. Because I certainly felt weird growing up.
Does that connect some, as you describe that, to the premise behind the Grace District and the record store? We have some teenagers that had gone to the record shop down there. Is it Prodigal Records?
You hadn't opened yet, though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, they got something going on there.
Yeah. Well, there is another shop that sells records. They probably run a Main Street Antiques. It has a large record collection. Yeah.
But does I've chased a squirrel, but does all of the music piece that you're describing, you got the Fine Arts Center,
right?
Isn't there a desire to create a musical hub?
There is. You look at a common story revitalizing towns is the artists save the town.
Yep.
And the bad story, when those stories go bad, is when the artists come in to save the town for the landlords, and then the landlords price them out. And so you have to be really careful to make sure those special tenants don't get pushed out by your Louis Vuittons and your high-end stores that can pay crazy amounts of rent, because then you rip the soul out of the town. So your artists, your musicians, your glass blowers, your songwriters, those are the people to celebrate. And that's what I want to do with El Weirdo, is have a mechanism to celebrate those people.
For right now, though, it's a food truck and it's behind history
History class, yeah. Yeah.
Is it open at lunch?
It's not. It's open the same time history classes. It'd be nice if it opened at lunch, but we don't.
So the hours are the same as history class?
Same as history class, yeah. We're just trying to get our recipes down and processes in the kitchen. And so when we open up we start construction next month on it, so it should be open the first of the year, which means May. So we have some of our processes down in the kitchen, so we don't look.
Everybody that's done anything with construction knows exactly what you just said.
Totally.
Well, we're getting kind of close to the end of our time, but I wanted to mention I really appreciated seeing the group that stepped up to help the cleanup of the park downtown.
Yeah.
Joe Moody Park.
Yeah.
And I think that was a unifying moment.
Yeah.
It's a good news story.
Absolutely.
It brought a light to something that embarrassed those of us that love Bay County.
Right.
And I think it gave, I hope and pray it gave a feeling that we care.
Right.
And the kind of things that were written there don't reflect who we are.
They do not. And we should all be offended by that. Right. Like that does not represent us and we don't stand for it. And every community that gets revitalized needs to be revitalized from within. And so you have some really incredible people, Tony Bostic, Elisa Rhodes, Robert Stewart. You got a lot of people in that community in Glenwood who are now kicking butt. And there has been people kicking butt for a long time, but now you have a group that are minority PC.
Right.
You got to follow them on Facebook. They are an awesome group of change makers.
Well, and I think you would echo this, but I believe Bay County is special. I believe it's special because of the community and what makes us up. I don't think that the division that is other places is in the hearts of the people. You were talking about politicians. I think when you actually sit down and talk to people of all forms of diversity, you find that the people here, whatever may be true other places, this group of people, we desire that the tide rise and that that all boats float with it.
Yeah, I think you'll find that too.
On a positive note, you've been a huge part of a part, but a significant part of some change. As you look to the future and you look to the downtown area, what is it in your mind as you look to a legacy that you talked about? What does that look like?
Well, with legacy, I only really care if my kids and my grandkids remember me. I don't really have like some aspiration of being like, this park's named Allan Park. That's not in my, I don't ever want to run for mayor. I don't want to ever be.
No, and that's good.
Right, yeah.
But with no names attached, you've already told me you kind of like the behind the scenes role.
Yeah.
But as we grow into who we're becoming, premier city in the Panhandle, I've heard the general's kind of his picture of that.
Right.
What does that look like from a business person's perspective as you take your family down there?
Right. So special communities are ones where everyone feels welcome in every district. What we don't want to do is revitalize an area of town where people of different demographics don't feel like they belong. So if we do the revitalization properly, you'll have people of all ages who feel like there are places for them to go that represent them. It won't be all rich old people, rich white old people. It won't be all kids. Having more kids would be awesome. But you want to have a place where everyone feels welcome. And you don't do that by overpricing their rent, having Louis Vuitton stores, which Winter Garden's done. It's just like the rent's too high. No one artist can afford it. And so what I want to see for downtown is not just 20 people owning the whole place, right? I want to see young people buying buildings. I want to see opportunity for everybody. I want to see new businesses and old businesses, artsy businesses, and I want to see people smiling.
Would it be fair to say that you'd love to see a place where when people have ideas and they want to chase their dream and work hard, there's an opportunity for them to do it?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's all I felt like in life, because of the way the life I was given is like, I can do whatever I want. Not break rules, but like I can build things. I never felt like I had to ask for permission to do things, of like that I can just go learn and do stuff. And I want that for other people. Downtown should be a place where the community gathers, and not just for parades. It needs to be a place for everybody. What's there, I don't really know. It's a place for everyone.
Well, I'm still learning, honestly, even though I'm born and raised in Bay County. I'm still learning the Panama City downtown side of it. Yeah. And I can't wait to go see some of the stuff about the Liberty ships and other things that are part of my history that I haven't gotten to see. Mm-hmm. I applaud what you guys are doing collectively, you and all those that you've kind of become the face for to some extent. Sure. And I can't wait to see who Bay County becomes. I think a couple of things that I love that people need to take away from this is that hard work pays off.
Often.
You may try and fail more than once.
Yeah.
especially today, you better learn to be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you know which direction you're going, be able to change that plan along the way and make it up as you go along.
Right.
Right. Which I think is cool. And then be able to take whatever you're handed and see the opportunities that exist within the struggle. I mean, that's just a foundational part of just not being in a fetal position somewhere in a corner and depressed. Is that whatever you're handed, you've got to be able to take it and make an opportunity out of it.
I agree.
Listen, Allan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, having this conversation, and I can't wait to come learn some more about history downtown.
Come by.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you were encouraged by the good news, we would ask you to subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube. If you will subscribe, all new content will come your way. You'll get notified of it, and it'll help us to brighten Bay County. Thanks, guys.